many visual artists are just scared to actually take the leap.
What happens in the next 6 months, 1 year, like you said, 5 years, 10 years, if you don't do anything? Where are you going to be at?
Here's Jaroid Henry here,
And I'm Jonah Allen, and we're inside the Jonah Allen Gallery.
and we came together here to give you as much value as possible as a visual artist so you can start learning the tactics and tools to scale your art career as far as you may want. Okay, on this particular podcast, I'm gonna be reading some questions that we had come in, and we're gonna answer those questions in detail. So, with that being said, we'll just jump straight into the first question. So, this particular artist says, relationships with money. You guys talk a lot about investing in your growth. How do you make those financial decisions with confidence?
It's a great question. I think it comes down to at least a couple things for me. First and foremost, intuition. I always trust my intuition. If I want to do something, I just do it. If it feels right, if I do. Second, look at research, look at data. Want to make sure whatever I'm investing in is legitimate. Case studies, testimonials. Maybe call some prior people who've gone through that experience, whatever that education is. And then another way to think about it is percentage of income. You should definitely be we all should be spending a percentage of our income on personal development. One of my coaches says, work harder on yourself than you do on your work. So we should all be working harder on ourselves and developing ourselves more so than we are even just on our work.
What's crazy is I seen a podcast today with a guy. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's freaking phenomenal. I forget the guy's name. You probably heard of it, but it's called like the School of Hard Knocks. And it's like a little
Yeah, of
kid
course.
go around. Blew up big. But I actually was watching one today, and the guy on there, he asked him like, how do you feel about like investing in your future and stuff? And the guy said something I thought was really, really clever. And the guy was a billionaire. He said the best advice he got was from his dad. And he said his dad told him, if you understand how to earn $10, invest that $10, take the risk, and then put that $10 to learn how to make 20, because worst case, you can always earn 10 again because you already understand how to earn 10. And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. So I think the main thing is so many visual artists are just scared to actually take the leap. Like I talked to a lot of artists, and some of them could see that it's like everything would pan out, but it's just that fear because they're like, what if it don't? And then the reality is when you don't think about like, what if it don't, then you start to make the wrong decisions. Because when you actually think about what if it don't, and I like to do this, I'm gonna say how I go about making these decisions. I think about like risk to reward, right? So exercise I like to do, and you could chime in on this, is like I talked about this before on an earlier podcast, but I like to really, really take the time out to ask myself, what's the risk? Like absolute worst thing, everything burned to the ground, I make this investment. What am I genuinely gonna lose? And then what's the potential reward? And usually if the reward outweigh the risk or the risk is manageable, like I'm like, you know what? If I lose out on 30,000, would it be the end of the world for me? Like, would it absolutely be the end of the world? Like, I remember I made my very first investment. It was $2,000 for online training. It was like my first real investment, at least. 2,000 for online training. But I was working a job. I was working at a dealership, selling cars. This was right before I went into finance. And while I was there, I was sitting there like, dang, $2,000? That's like half my check for the month. Because at the time it was like $4,000. But it didn't occur to me like, worst case, next month I'm gonna just get another $4,000 from my job. But if this opportunity work out, it could potentially help me make 10,000, 20, whatever it may be. So I think the way I like to go about it is as simple as, does the risk outweigh the reward, and really take the time to like really write that down. Like really write down what's all our risk. Would it be the end of the world? For some people it would, depending on the investment. But for others it's usually not the end of the world. And then if it's not the end of the world, take the risk, you know?
Absolutely. I think investing in yourself, non-negotiable. Have to do it.
100%. I was talking to a guy today, and a guy told me, another artist, he's like, I feel like I always decided to like stay comfortable. And I usually try to figure stuff out on my own. And I'm like, how much are you making at art sales? He's like, this month I'm at like $700. I say, you know what's crazy? You know who Jonah Allen is? He's like, yes. So I was talking about you. I said, funny enough, Jonah Allen did over 1 million, right? And why two things he stressed is the absolute opposite, which is he says, for growth, which we both talk about, you need to be uncomfortable. And the main way to succeed is to educate yourself. So to learn from somebody else. I was like, dude, you need to flip that script completely, completely around.
That's so true. That reminds me of a quote from Alex Ramosi. He didn't create this, but I heard it from him, and he heard it somewhere. But it's like basically we all pay an ignorance tax. So if you're an artist and you don't know how to make 100 grand a year yet, well, you're paying an ignorance tax of $100,000 a year. Or
Yeah.
if your goal is to make 1 million and you're not making 1 million yet, then let's say you're making $100,000, but you want to make 1 million. Well, you're paying an ignorance tax of $900,000 because you don't have the skills or the knowledge how to make $1 million.
Yeah. Another thing Alex and Moses say is like, you're gonna pay the cost regardless, but it depends on what cost you want to pay. Do you want to pay the cost of your education that's gonna get you farther, or you want to pay the cost of being stagnant and being in the same spot 12 months from now, 2 years from now? A lot of people pay the cost of time. You know, that's one thing like we're very big on. It's like the most valuable thing we have is time. And a lot of people pay the cost of time and then they regret it like 20 years later, 30 years later, like I wish I would have did it, you know? I would say the biggest thing is you just don't want to move forward with regret. So when you're making a decision, ask yourself, in 10 years, would I potentially regret not taking that action, not making that investment, or not trying to get in front of that mentor and learn from that person?
And there's also the cost of inaction. What happens in the next 6 months, 1 year, like you said, 5 years, 10 years, if you don't do anything? Where are you going to be at?
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you this. I think what make us so eager to like invest in stuff and educate ourselves for growth because I think we I know for me, like I obsess over the future. Like every time I come to you like, dude, let's do it. We gotta organize the vision board. What's the plan? Where we want to be 12 months from now? Where we gonna be five, and this is the goal. And I think when you obsess on where you want to be and not focusing on where you're at today, you start taking actions to put you in position to be where you want to be. And I think that makes those investments become 10 times easier because when I'm thinking of investment, I'm thinking about like what's the potential outcome 12 months from now.
Yeah, but I also think it's good to balance between the present and the future. As in, like, totally agree with everything you're saying, but just for me, I don't always, in my head at least, like speaking just from myself, I don't always want to be thinking about the future. I want to be living the moment right now, but also seeing the future too.
I do think that's one thing we probably like differ on because I noticed like you're always in problem like, dude, next month, dude, 2 months from now. You're like, dude, today is a beautiful day. I'm just like, I know today's a beautiful day, but I'm focused on the future, you know?
Yeah.
Another thing too is like, even for me, I'm like big on, like, I try to stay away from my intuition for some reason. Interestingly. I always try to say like, sometimes I genuinely feel like, I don't know. I always felt like my intuition could steer me wrong.
Where'd you get that
I don't
from?
know. I feel like I don't. I feel like it's one of those internal things that could be a limiting belief and probably not even true. But I always felt like you know what, hard data. Like I'm very big on like hard numbers. What it look like. Forget what my brain think, and if the numbers make sense, the data makes sense. I just like do it. Even sometimes I'm like I wouldn't do it, even though my intuition is telling me to do it. You know. So I think we have to wrap this up. What would you say the biggest takeaways would be?
When you're considering about investing in something like education or anything,
Just investing in yourself growth.
investing in yourself. Well, think about like where you first. I mean, it all goes back to clarity. Like, where do you want to be? Is this gonna get you closer to where you want to be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? And yeah, is it get you to where closer to where you want to be? And if it does, it's non-negotiable. Why not?
I think that makes total sense. Ask yourself, what would you want to be?
And then if you're thinking about prioritizing what type of education, it goes back to your priority of what's most important to you.
I think that's another really, really, really good question. For example, I think a lot of visual artists invest in themselves a lot more than I ever imagined. But I think they spend too much in the wrong area.
Such as?
The art itself. Like I've seen artists that like create absolutely phenomenal work, and they're thinking like I just talked to another guy, and they want to like invest more into creating work, more into creating. And then before you know it, they have the absolute most stunning and beautiful work, but they have 60 paintings in their home because it never crossed their mind to think about like now that I have this beautiful work, maybe I should educate myself on how to sell it.
I maybe disagree with you a little bit. I mean, I think, yeah, for sure you want to sell your work, but I think there's a time and place for you to make work where it might not be ready to share yet because you haven't found your thing. Like, for instance, like to make a certain amount of, to make one good painting or one good photograph, you got to make a lot of shitty paintings. You got to make a lot of shitty photographs. So,
True. But what do you think the ratio should be when it comes to like investing in your education to become a great photographer, a great art of painter versus investing in like how to sell it or market it?
I think the first step is to, it's kind of like two train tracks, you know, they're running parallel. So you have to make good work, right? But you also have to be able to market and sell the work, or have somebody market and sell it for you. So if you're an artist, I think the first step though is make really good work. So that takes a certain amount of time before you land on what you feel like is good work. So you feel confident enough about it, because you're not gonna be able to sell your work if you're not into it, if you're not confident about it. So you got to be stoked about what you're creating. I think that's the first step, and then have some sort of style. You know what I mean? Like, I think is when somebody can see your work and be like, "That's Jaroid Henry," or "Oh, that's
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
that's Jackson Pollock." Like, then obviously, like, you have a certain look. Now, you don't necessarily have to wait to start selling your work to get to that point. However, I think it is important that you develop your work and that you don't just start. You can start selling it. I don't know. I think there's definitely importance with developing your work. However, it's also really important to invest in yourself. So when is the right time to invest in yourself for marketing and sales? I mean, as soon as you're stoked about your work. Yeah, I mean, as soon as you want to be, when you feel like you want to do this full time, if that's your goal, start right away.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get people to see work, nobody's gonna buy it. No one's coming and knocking your door to ask to buy your paintings, your art. You got to get it out there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think I kind of see it more of like you need to create great work. There's no exception about like great work. It's like art is like a product, and you need to have a great product if you want people to be willing to spend their top dollar on it.
And I think you also have to be dedicated to pursuing mastery in your
Yeah,
work
to your
too.
craft.
So there's nothing wrong with educating yourself in, I don't believe there's anything wrong with educating yourself in your craft. However, you shouldn't just exclusively educate yourself in your craft. You should also need to educate yourself in marketing and sales.
So what would you say the percentage is? Educating yourself,
I think for me, when I started, it was like 100% creating.
which I think is for like 99% of
Beginning,
artists. Yeah.
you develop it, and then, phew, and then it flips the other way. I mean, last 5 years, pretty much, I want to say, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to give you a number. It's difficult because,
Like rough.
like, I can't percent. I don't know. All of my personal development that my accountant logs, it's 100% business. It's marketing, it's sales, it's personal development of myself. However, I mean, I do invest heavily into my art business and the creation side as well, and gear. So it's mostly marketing and sales and personal development, but I still invested a lot in, travel, all the different tools that I have. I mean, I got a van, I got a
Yeah,
paramotor.
I know what your cost.
I got a jet ski.
But this the thing for the people that's watching and they wondering like, how should I divide this ratio? Because a lot of people are like you said in the beginning, like all artists do, they start out at 100% investing into their craft, right? But they never transition to invest in their education to market and sell that craft. So if you have to give them a ratio of like a good rule of thumb, what would you say? I personally think it should be a 50-50 split.
That's what my thought was. Yeah, 50-50.
I think if you want to create beautiful work, but I think it's also equally as important to be able to market and sell that work.
think it's vague.
Yeah. With that being said, if you looking to invest in your artwork, I hope that you find this podcast really, really valuable. And another thing that I love that we talk about, I think we shot a lot of great people for you guys to learn from. So if you hear us say certain names, feel free to write them down and then check them out, because these are people that we are learning from on a day-to-day basis, and once again investing into to make sure we're furthering our education to sell as much art as possible. But with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode, and then we'll see you guys. See you on the next one.